Welcome back and thanks for staying on tonight here on In Focus. And let's continue to get more reaction tonight from the President's address. We're joined by Matthew Parks, COSATU's Parliamentary Coordinator, joining us tonight. Matthew, good evening and thank you very much for your time and joining us today here on In Focus. One of the first things that the President says about his plan of action in terms of implementation of the recommendations of the Commission of Inquiry is that I've given the report to Parliament to have a peruse over it. I've given it to particular institutions. I've given it particularly to institutions like the South African Revenue Service, Financial Intelligence Center. I've given it to the SAPS Directorate for Priority Investigations. I've given it to the NPA. I've given it to the Asset Forfeiture Unit and the offices of the Director of Public Prosecutions who have jurisdiction over these matters. Do you think that is enough action based on the recommendations on how to deal with the criminal investigations and prosecutions?
Yeah, no, good evening. So look, it's not enough. I think we do appreciate some of the recent interventions by government over the past few months, the past year. You know, government's done well, for example, to allocate additional resources to the South African Revenue Service. We've already seen 60 billion rand in additional taxes being collected from those who've been trying to dodge taxes. That's positive. We've seen a significant increase in the amount of persons being charged, brought to court, and even some convictions, albeit not enough of senior people. We've seen, you know, the recent week, Marcus Justus assets being attached by the South African Reserve Bank. So those are some positive initial kind of step forwards. I think we do welcome the ANC's implementation of the step-aside rule. So those are good initial steps, but much more needs to be done because really corruption is a cancer eating at the heart of the state, at the heart of our fabric as a society. It has real consequences in terms of workers losing their jobs in the public and the private sector, public servants not getting the increases. It has consequences to Eskom, which is struggling to provide electricity, to Transnet and Metro Rail struggling to transport goods and commuters. So there is a real price tag we're paying because of corruption. We really need to see the struggle, the battles being intensified. So one appreciates the various kind of broad announcements by the President today, but we need to see the granular detail. So we hope in the next few days we'll see from ministers the specific interventions which they are going to do in the different departments. Because for far too long we've really treated this battle against corruption with kid gloves. So we need to see specifically in the South African Police Service a reverse in the headcount decline from 200,000 to 172,000 over the past decade. We really need to see the South African Revenue Service being capacitated, given additional resources and personnel to undertake lifestyle audits of politicians, of senior officials in the state and high wealth individuals. We need to see SARS being able to go after tax evasion at a much higher level. We need to see the SIU investigations being expanded to some of the key epicenters of corruption in the state, be it Eskom, Transnet, Metro Rail, some of the municipalities and provincial departments, some of the national departments like the Defence Force, Public Works and so forth. We really need to see government, so the President made very positive announcements on the public procurement bill tonight, or positive commitments. So we need to see those commitments being translated into additional enhancements of the public procurement bill, which is currently leaving NEDLAC, to make sure we have a single online portal for all of public procurement, that all tender data is available to the public on this portal. We need to see the ban on politicians doing business with the state to be extended to the dependents, to the spouses, to the spouses of senior officials in the state, and to really see lifestyle audits being done of these persons all the time. We're quite concerned that government is very soft on the issue of protecting whistleblowers, because we've seen as COSATU, our own shop stewards in Samu being murdered because they blew the whistle on the VBS corruption in Limpopo and across the country. We've seen ANC councils being murdered in KZN when they blew the whistle on corruption. We saw last year a senior official in Gauteng being murdered because she blew the whistle on corruption. But yet we don't provide protection to whistleblowers. In terms of witness protection, we also need to see government acting on the Zondo Commission's recommendations to incentivize, to reward whistleblowers in terms of public procurement, but also across the state. So there is some positive kind of commitment of the President today. We really hope to see the granular detail, but we don't think we can afford to continue to be soft on corruption when it's destroying our very capacity to deliver as a state and is really destroying our very fabric as a society.
Speaking of capacity, one of the recommendations that the President was given by the Commission was to establish a commission of inquiry into what happened at PRASA. The President, in terms of the actions, he says a decision on the establishment of a commission of inquiry into PRASA will be held in abeyance until the completion of the investigation underway by the DPCI and the SIU and the review by the PRASA board. A determination will then be made on whether the processes have sufficiently addressed the matters raised by the Commission. Do you think work that is being done currently by the SIU, the investigation that is being done by the board, and what is being done by the DPCI at PRASA would uncover and unearth exactly what happened there in terms of the capture of PRASA?
So, look, our preference would be we don't need more commissions of inquiry, to be honest. We've had many commissions of inquiry. They've served their purpose. They've shone a spotlight on what's the problem, what needs to be done. For us, we'd be keen on enhancing the investigations by the SIU, by the police, by the NPA, into what has gone into PRASA and to Transnet. Because that's going to take us to arrest, to charging people, to seizing assets, to taking people to court, to making sure we get convictions. We simply cannot afford further delays down the road. Not when we've seen the devastation that's hit Transnet, has hit Metro Rail, has hit Eskom, and countless other SOEs like SABC, like Denel, and so forth. So I think for us, it's really about let's empower the SIU, give them the resources they need to. Let's give the resources to the National Prosecuting Authority, including filling vacancies and giving them additional skilled personnel, be it lawyers, be it forensic investigators, be it auditors, etc. And let's make sure that we prioritize corruption cases in our courts. We can't afford, on average, when it takes about 2 years to get your case through the judicial system. Let's make sure corruption cases are at the top of the queue. Let's have dedicated anti-corruption or commercial crimes courts in each of our provincial centers, in each of our district centers, to really make sure we elevate this fight against corruption and don't treat it like any other crime. We shouldn't be having countless postponements. We shouldn't have a situation where a former mayor of one of our major cities that was charged 5 years ago, she has yet to be brought to trial. So we want to see these kind of people being brought to trial, being exposed, and being taken to prison.
In terms of responding, Matthew, I know you're in Parliament, to the abuse of the majority power, which the State Commission saying we saw happen, and that led to the Parliament being unable to exercise oversight, particularly on particular members of the executive. Particularly highlighted in the report is the former president himself. What do you make of the recommendations of a monitoring body that I suppose looks at the ability of Parliament to conduct its oversight function?
Yeah, I think we would welcome that, because it is correct that it is under the 5th Parliament's watch and the 4th Parliament's watch that state capture really happened. Time and again, the ruling party's MPs decided to shield the former president, to shield former members of cabinet when they were accused of serious criminal wrongdoing. And yes, there were good members of Parliament who did try their level best to expose this thing, to stand up to it, to speak truth to power. But in most instances, our members of Parliament failed to do what they needed to do. You cannot deny the fact that state capture happened under their watch. So we think if there are recommendations, if there's a need for an oversight body to review the role of Parliament, not just Parliament, provincial legislatures too, municipal councils as well, and other Chapter 9 bodies, we should welcome it. Let's see how can we strengthen our governance systems, how can we strengthen oversight and accountability. We also think that as society, civil society, we have a role to play in constantly blowing the whistle against corruption. It also means political parties too need to be much more serious when they deploy people to represent the public in Parliament, the legislatures and the councils, because often if you deploy weak people, then we should not be surprised when you find those institutions become weak and fail to do what's right. There is an electoral amendment bill currently before Parliament. It's seeking to try to kind of speak to some of the recommendations. We think this isn't going to be a once-off intervention. It's going to be a journey where we're going to have to constantly seek to improve our governance systems, to improve our oversight and accountability. We can't afford, again, to be found wanting on this kind of issue, and there's this kind of a price tag that workers pay.
Matthew, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. That is COSATU's Parliamentary Coordinator there, Matthew Parks.